Hey y'all, what's up? Just waiting here for Couch About to go live on a snowy morning here in Chicago. Telling you, man, October snow. There's nothing right about that. I'm not a fan. Um, I do know that YouTube is live, so we are going to push this one out of the station, get us out of the birdhouse, if you will. Um, so let's do this. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, new Pragmatic. It's snowy October morning here in Chicago. Um, I'm not even ready to deal with that out there. I am ready to hear your questions, give you feedback on the work you've submitted. And today we've got a couple of students in here. Ricardo is back, Bryn is back, and apparently I missed a project yesterday. There was one of Bryn's that I did not look at, and she's subsequently added one more on top of that. So we'll take a look at both of those. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's go ahead and get this underway. So this is the one that I did not take a look at yesterday. It's pretty straightforward. And Bryn, you clearly hit the mark here. You know, when we first talk about using margins and using grids, it's really just to see, okay, can you do this with the tool? So here with the website DZ, it's just, where is that margin for the page, and you've effectively identified like the content is here. A lot of people get tripped up. They think, oh well, there is no margin because the illustration goes all the way to the edge. The margin typically is associated with the content, and you've done an effective job there. You also identified that it kind of comes up here and it gets pretty close to that getting contact. So it's not exact, but it's definitely there. Same thing happens here with hire a villa. This is like a fancy Airbnb site. The content here is much more structured. 3-column design. You can make an argument that this sign up or what is this called even? Well, it's like it's a villa search box. That you could argue is really 1 column. Same thing here. This book with us and we'll plant a tree. This is like an ad, or a promo. This is pretty much 1 column, and this down here is like 5 columns. And one of the things that I like to do, and I'm gonna have to duplicate this so I can draw on it. One of the things I like to do is I like to allow myself to build additional grids if needed, and come over here. If I need to build an additional grid, the easiest way to do that is to build a shape over the top of this, and then make it into a frame. Once it's a frame, I can then add a grid to it, and as you can see, this grid right now is just the hex, more like the hash. I can say instead of grid, I want columns and 5, and maybe the gutter is a bit wider. Yeah, the gutter is definitely a bit wider on that. And then I go ahead and get rid of that. Looks like it's got a fill on it. Go ahead and get rid of it, and then you can see it is a 5-column design down there. This is helpful when you're trying to lay out a page, and you need multiple columns or multiple grids. That is something that we do sometimes need, but I just want to take a second and show you how I would do that if I needed more than 1 grid in a design. And oftentimes I'll come through and just change the opacity on that a bit so it kind of sticks out. Like I was thinking more of a 5-column grid down here. That's how I would identify that for my team. Here, this is this is basically, this is pretty straightforward. You were given a series of shapes and asked to get them into a grid format, and this works overall. Right now the way this is set up, it's basically a 4-column grid that you've kind of gone through and squeezed some of these, which is interesting, to be completely honest with you. Some of these I totally get, like why you would blow these up. How these became small, I'm not sure, because those really don't fit into a grid. Now they do when they're packaged together with that, and you've got like, oh, okay, I see what you did. You basically said this is a 6-column grid or something thereabouts. Would encourage you to, oh, you've got your grid turned off here. All right, so let's look at this. Yeah, 2-column. This works all the way to this point, and then this one's got a little odd construction in and of itself. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. The one thing you want to look out for is when you're shrinking stuff down, and it's clearly got typography inside of it. You want to make sure that the typography is still legible. But overall, this is doing what it needs to do. I think one of the other problems here is, like, you've got to be really careful when you're working with shapes. This has clearly been stretched. I'm not quite sure. You have it like that. I think it's meant to be a little taller. I don't have the original here, but you definitely don't want to get into this habit of just squishing things down. So, and that's the other thing with grid, is it can lead to people feeling like, oh, well, I definitely want to make it fit into this particular shape. I think it'd be smart if you got comfortable. And that's, to be honest with you, that may even still be squished, but you've got to get comfortable with some odd spacing, especially in digital when things are responsive. It's not always going to line up. Let's jump over here to your type exercise. Here, I thought you did a really good job. People ask all the time, are these phrases really, these definitions, are they really important? And I think they are, because when you're talking about typography with another designer, it becomes very clear whether you're comfortable with typography or not by the way that you talk about it. If instead of saying counter, like, which is right here, really any of these could be the counter, but instead of saying counter, if you say the open space, or that hole in the hole in the E, or the hole in the G, the hole in the E is more of an I, but the terms you use are, it does mean something. Also, I think it helps to study this typography and understand the structural elements of it. Case in point, X height and baseline. So many times we will come back and talk about what's the X height of the typography. Is this on the baseline? I rarely will say, oh, the cap height of blah, blah, blah. I'll always come back to baseline and X height. And one of the things that I misused a lot early in my design career was the overhang. I didn't understand that that many typefaces have an overhang, and I would try to constantly nudge my typography up to rest on the baseline, not realizing that it wasn't drawn that way. And of course, when you nudge this typography up to rest on the baseline, it makes the capital B here would be floating above the baseline. So understanding how type is made and understanding that there is such a thing as an overhang could dramatically improve your ability to be comfortable with type. And if you're comfortable with type, you're going to be much more effective using it. Over here, everything here works out for me. I've I've used Dido as a label. It doesn't mean that you can't. The headline, I think, is the better usage of it. I would never want to see it as a paragraph type because of the stroke contrast. Roboto can be used everywhere, but the problem I have with Roboto is I don't want to see a lot of it because it doesn't have any stroke contrast, and that makes it very hard to read over long passages. Then there's IBM Plex, and I'm a fanboy of IBM Plex. You have it here as headline and paragraph specific, but you have a caveat on it on type size, so over 20. So I thought I'd bring us over here really fast and show you that I did use IBM Plex recently on a project. Now this is Plex. Let's say this is the serif. Yeah, so this is Plex serif, and it's used at 18. So you get an idea of what you can and can't do. This oddly enough is the italic version of Plex, Plex serif with a Plex sans, and then a Plex serif again. So you get an idea of how it can be used. And here I have it paired together, with this bold Plex sans going with the Plex serif. So again, could be used. You had it another way, which is fine. But I did want to show you that in use. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've gone over grids. We've gone over type. Think Ricardo has one as well. Oh yeah. Now I remember. Ricardo is going through his sketches, and if I can get these to open. One thing I love about sketches, and I have sketchbooks. Ricardo, full of interface drawings, just studies. A lot of times we'll want to screen grab, and put it in a folder. I feel really good about that, but sometimes I just want to review interface sketches, and I want to see. There's so many times where I've gone through, and this is more of a flow, but you get the idea. This whole you've kind of got a flow. You've got the arrows going. You have this natural tendency to go, okay, well, this is where I start, and this is the next thing I do, and now I get this pop over, and then I can do the sign up. This is important to. These patterns are important to pay attention to. Here you're going through Amazon, and here's the home page, and I've gone to a costume page, and here I'm looking at a specific item, and I'm going to add it to the cart. I do think that you want to give yourself enough space, okay? So this is something where I feel like you squeezed it on the one page, probably to share with me, when you could have put 1 through 4 on a page because it's a little deeper, and then gone 5 through 9 on a second page. Okay, just make sure when you're doing these little sketches that you're giving yourself enough space to understand. You're giving yourself enough space to basically understand what's there without having to get into minute details. And I know you come from a print background, so these sketches shouldn't be a big deal for you. Frank and Oak. This one was interesting to me because I saw what you did, and I'm like, did they redesign their site? So I went to Frank and Oak, and one of the reasons why I like Frank and Oak is I think they do a really good job with these mega menus. And when you get into design patterns, you'll read more about mega menus and why they're important, and how they're actually a pretty good design pattern, even though it could be also argued that they overload the user with stuff to look at. But I was wondering, okay, so where the hell did this come from? Well, obviously, this is the responsive version of it. Here you go. So what Ricardo was drawing and sketching out was a responsive version, and I think that it is important to realize that these sites do have dramatic changes dependent on the size of the interface that they're being displayed on. This is, we haven't talked, Ricardo. We haven't talked a lot about responsive design yet because you're just getting kind of into this. But this is one of those this is a very important thing to realize, that information is handled differently dependent on the size that it's being displayed on. So really good job there. And then Figma. Figma's onboarding screen is very straightforward. I do like the fact that everything becomes really focused. This is very much a mobile design pattern. Here's the home page, email password, a little bit of info, welcome, set up your team, here's the plan, and you're finished. Like it's just very focused, these modals, and then you're dumped into the interface. So really good stuff there. All right. And then I did read your item on the Reuters video pass, and it's funny. It's funny. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen back real quick. So the other piece that Ricardo had or has is the working with video players and having a video player like timeout on your phone. And it's one of these things where you could set it to maintain activity, to not fade away. You could also leave it to the user. And the problem is, a user is not going to set their phone to stay on forever just to use one website. It's got to be something that is pushed from the side of the site proprietor. And oftentimes we think about, well, if I would just do something a little different, if I would just adjust my usage to use that site or that product, and I gotta say that I think that's an unrealistic ask. We should be, as people building products, we should be trying to best understand our user and doing the things that we can to make our product as good as possible for those users. And then it's going to be imperfect for people that are not our primary target. So the question here is obviously, well, is Ricardo the primary target of Reuters, and has Reuters determined who their primary target is and optimized their product appropriately? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Only Reuters would really know the answer to that. But I did think your observations were pretty accurate, and I see the same thing out of YouTube. Like YouTube will check out on my phone, and the only reason that it keeps playing is I have a premium subscription, and it'll play even though the phone has gone dark. The interesting thing about that is it's the playing even though it's gone dark. That's how I would prefer it to just work, but they've turned it into, oh, okay, well, we know how to turn that on, but you'll have to pay us for that. So it's kind of interesting how people will discover products in making it capable to do the things that you want it to do. It's just that there's just enough friction there to get somebody to pay extra money to make that thing happen. So something to keep an eye on as you're going through your product journey there, Ricardo. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. I hope it is not snowing where you are, and I will see some of you here a little later today, and the rest of you, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.